Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lula, Andrew Rogers here with me, and we are joined now by Avery Howard, our friend and colleague here at Hurrdat Sports. Avery, how you doing?
What up, Avery?
I don't know if I can hear you guys. I don't know if you can hear
Can
me.
you hear? Is this better? Check more? Yeah? No?
A little bit more?
A little bit more?
Yeah, I think so.
See?
We good?
What? We had that already dialed up there, and Shane's like, turn it down, turn
know.
it down.
The music in
Headphones
between
are
gets a little
loud.
loud.
The
Okay, I think we're
Shane,
good.
that's your fault.
We good?
It's
Okay.
it's all good, Shane.
Uh,
okay.
Can I ask a question real
Nope.
quick? And I don't mean to steal Avery's thunder
No,
here,
go
but
ahead.
what is the demonstration team? I've
I-
never heard that before.
I think it was just he was like renaming the scout team. It kind of sounded like.
oh, yeah,
Yeah,
because
that
they
would
kind
be
of like
right.
demonstrate what the other team's doing,
Yeah.
like what the opponent's doing for the
Okay.
next week.
All right, I'll move on. I'll
That's what I assumed.
turn the mic
Yeah.
off now.
See you later.
That's what I
I
assumed.
think.
I've never heard that term either.
He used it like interchangeably,
assumption.
like right afterwards. It's like he almost like
Yeah.
caught himself. It's almost like maybe just like a
Like an
lingo
internal-
thing.
Well,
they
Yeah, no
wanna
one likes to
use.
say the same word 3 times in a row in the same sentence.
Scout.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you use that, or if you use the word overcome.
You know what he
like, you're
doesn't.
Like, I want to use a different word than overcome in my next sentence.
You know what he doesn't have a hard time saying over and over again
On the
is
grass.
on the grass. It drives me
Yeah.
crazy, and I don't know why.
Yeah. I think it might just be like an internal thing. Like I know like on soccer terms, like sometimes you'll be called like a reserve or a subs, but like some coaches on certain coaching staffs, like they won't use that at all. Like they'll call them game changers. They will not use like reserves or subs like at all. They just call them game changers or like, here comes our new wave of game changers. So I think it might just be like a lingo belief thing potentially.
I think I would have preferred being called a game changer more. I was mostly called a scrub, which I did not love, but probably more accurate than
Mhm.
game changer. Although
I was called Scrappy, so
I did-
I don't know how much better that is.
Yeah, although game changer can be positive or
Yeah.
negative, so I might have been a game changer. I'm not gonna tell you in which
That's
way.
fair.
So Avery, coming off of you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but coming off of that Northwestern game, I guess how did you feel overall about the performance? Because I think some people sort of walked away feeling a little lackluster,
Mhm.
just because we talked about this. It's not the prettiest thing in the world to
Yeah.
watch, but you still come out with the W there. I guess as you're kind of watching Nebraska turn into this Iowa-esque team, like how do you just process that in real time?
It was kind of similar to, I guess the way I processed it kind of to the Illinois game, because I walked away from that game on the road kind of feeling confident, just hearing what I'd heard after the Michigan game and then their response. And I think I was kind of surprised to see so many of the negative responses after the Illinois game, just
Mhm.
because, yeah, it wasn't the prettiest, but it never felt like Illinois was threatening.
Sure.
And I felt like, yeah, that's a defensive side of the ball kind of thing. However, I did expect more of a dominant performance against Northwestern, but I think when you watch the way that I just think you have to remember, like, we have such high expectations, I think, so quickly just because of how much reassurance we're being fed constantly week after week from this coaching staff and just how much they're not in panic, it seems like. So I
Mhm.
think our bar went from maybe the very bottom coming off last year as viewers and fans and media members to just kind of like setting it really high because everything seems like it's so much better than
Mhm.
where it was at. That when there's games like that, I think last year Nebraska fans would have been like, hey, we got it done. They gave up a field goal in the fourth quarter, but they didn't blow it out, that kind of thing. And now I just think the bar of expectation has been set so high again after just, I think, knowing that there's just a good coaching staff in place that's putting taking the right steps, that when I watch this team rally around each other, even after an ugly win,
Mhm.
I can see what it means to them. And I can see what it means to an offensive side of the ball that's literally trying to do whatever they can to score points and I'm not saying that's an excuse for the interceptions and putting the balls on the ground, that kind of thing, but they're so supportive of one another. And you see how Coach Rhule reacts in the locker room afterwards. That was what was it, 17-9? Is that what this? Yeah, 17-9 win. And I think everyone was like, what was that? And then you see the way the team's reacting, like they have to fight every tooth and nail for a win right now. So I think as disappointing sometimes it seems when you feel like, okay, on paper, this team, Nebraska, should be just going after it, but there's just so many struggles that they're going through right now, and for them to still come out on top, I think I have to take a step back and be like, a win is a win for this team right now, and it might be ugly, but like the heart, the grit, and the toughness is there, and there's the no quit that I can appreciate and I can value. And I'm not in that locker room right now. I don't
Mhm.
know what that's like. So I think I kind of was surprised a little bit after Illinois on the negative responses, not so much for Northwestern, but just watching what these wins means this team, I think kind of says what it is for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned on paper. I don't know if anybody should expect this team to light the world on fire, even
Right.
when this team was fully
Mhm.
healthy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, if we're being honest, this is not Michigan. This is not Ohio State.
Right.
This is not Penn State. They're
Mhm.
trying to build to get there,
Mhm.
and they have every intent to
Right.
at some point. But no one should be expecting them to cover every single week
Right.
and to be absolutely dominant. Where I'm most impressed with this team is just seeing the progress overall from last year's team to this
Mhm.
year's team. And that starts with the turnover margin.
Mhm.
Like, even if they put the ball on the ground, even if they give the ball to the other team via interception, what happens at the end of most games? They're either close to even or above average, right? That's where this team rests. That's why they win games. That's why they can win 17-9 instead of being on the losing end of that. So it just kind of all boils down to just taking a chill pill,
Mhm.
right? Just being okay with the W, even if it looks ugly. We talk about ugly wins
Mhm.
all the time. You have to win ugly before you can win pretty,
Mhm.
right? Until you get there, be happy with where they are today
Mhm.
and how they've battled through all this adversity. It goes back to preparedness, right? So Tony White said he's never been around a program that's had to move pieces around like this one,
Right.
right? And being prepared just for anything that comes their way. And I think that also falls into the injury category of having young guys ready to go, ready to step up. But do you think that applies? How do I put this? Think that applies to more than just how difficult Nebraska is to prepare for, like from an opponent point of view, because there's so many moving pieces that even opponents out there are like, who are we going to get today?
I mean, on the defensive side, like there's so many guys that are
Mhm.
in and out, and like we've talked this for week after week. Like the level doesn't drop. You half the time don't even know who's out there, and so like for on an offensive side, I can imagine what that's like. And also, what I kind of meant too on the Northwestern game is like on paper, when you look at rushing defense and rush offense
Sure.
for Nebraska, it was like that is their bread and butter, and Northwestern has none of that. And then for Nebraska to take to the air game as much as they did, I mean, I'm assuming on Northwestern's end, they're like, well, I didn't expect that. I
Mhm.
mean, and not that it necessarily executed. I mean, 17, I think we said dropbacks for Heinrich, and he completed 8 of them, the 144-yarder, whatever it was. But I don't think Northwestern out of the gate was like, yeah, they're going to toss it around the yard here today. So I don't know. I think like as Nebraska's trying to figure that out, I can imagine. But like I think too, it's probably just more difficult. Probably an obvious statement here, but on the defensive end, just because they can shuffle so many guys in, and even if someone is out of position or someone goes down, we haven't really even seen that so far, the injury on that side. But like, there's so many guys that I just don't think the level drops it. And on the offensive side, I didn't even realize because in the flow of the game that Jenkins was in at center at the end of the game.
Mhm.
I didn't even
Yeah.
know. And I mean, I probably should have because I knew Ben Scott went out, but
Yeah.
I was paying attention to all the
Mhm.
other things on the offense. And I'm like, the fact that he went from a guard position to center and I didn't even realize, like, talk about your preparedness level, like in personally, like you have to look at different kinds of film to be ready for that.
Mhm.
Like you're studying not only a guard position, like you're studying the whole O line. I think that's something they've talked about previously too. Like we're not just studying for one position, like we study as a group. Like if I've got to throw you in there, like you got to know the coverages, you got to know the package. So I think the detail oriented stuff like that, I can only imagine what that's like to learn, but to get ready, prepared
Mhm.
against.
Yeah, I mean it, and you talked about it on the defensive side of the ball a little bit, where they just have so many pieces, and it kind of it's a little funny to me actually because like you mentioned the injuries, there actually have been a couple injuries on the defense. We just don't
we
notice,
just don't know.
right? Like Luke Reimer missed
Yeah,
significant
right,
time.
right.
Nick Henrich
Yep.
was not healthy to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
Deshaun Singleton's still not playing.
Yep.
And we just don't notice because everybody back there is awesome
Right.
and it's all good.
Mhm.
And then you throw in scout team guys in there that you've never heard of before.
Mhm.
You have to literally look up on your roster who just made that sack
Mhm.
because you have no idea who James Williams is.
KC kid.
And you're just
Everybody but Avery, apparently.
yeah, she was like, "That's my guy. That's my guy." No, but you've got this. There's this almost incredible confidence on the defensive side of the ball because the fact is they don't need James Williams right now.
Mhm.
They've got enough guys on the D line. They've got enough guys at those rush positions. They don't need James Williams right now, but they're like, hey, we've got this guy who can play. We're going to get him on the field. And they know they're going to need guys like James Williams next year or the year after or whatever, right? And and Coach White kind of talked about this, is James Williams is the validation that, like, hey, your hard work's going to pay off.
Yeah, like you will get a shot.
Yeah, like if
Yeah.
you're good enough on scout team, you will get a shot. I think a
Mhm.
lot of coaches talk about that,
Yeah.
right? They're like, oh, hey, if you really ball out, no matter what
like
your
a false
role
hope.
is, yeah, they're just blowing smoke up your butt,
Mhm,
right? Because
mhm.
they're like, you're never going to play.
Mhm.
Some JUCO D lineman on
Mhm.
scout team is never going to play no matter how good he is. And they're like, oh, no, James Williams is good. We're going to play him.
Yeah.
We're going to put him in a package. And then he balled out in the game like, hey, we're going
Yeah.
to play you more.
Yeah, how cool was that? It wasn't even like we're gonna put him. It was like we have a design package for him to get into the game.
They designed a package for a scout team guy.
Because of how hard he'd been playing in scout team
Yeah.
and how much like he was causing havoc for their own offense.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting that I think Tony said it yesterday. He was like, we would not be the defense that we are if the offense isn't the offense that they are in practice. Like, I think there's a lot of frustrations for the fans right now seeing what the identity is, but like, because the offense is going as hard as they are and trying to get better every day and trying to figure out like what this offense is going to look like and being the run offense that we've seen at times, like the defense has been well prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not, I don't think people should hear that and say, hey, the offense is balling out in practice and stuff like that. But they're going hard. They're going full contact. They're going, Coach Rhule talked about, hey, we've got the second hardest practice in America, according to the NFL scout. But, it's the thing that we don't think about all the time. And this is really intuitive, but until somebody says it out loud, you don't necessarily think about it, is, okay, if you don't want guys to be better at tackling, you have to tackle in practice, but somebody has to get tackled, right? Like, that's the offense. Those are, you're submitting yourself to a pounding in practice when you're going to have to do that during game week, and maybe you're trying to get fresh or whatever, but you're doing it to help out your defense, right? Like, and that's not something that I'd ever really thought about before, even though it's obviously it's super, like, somebody has to get tackled to work on tackling, right?
I think too, like, a major kudos to this team, because when you have a side of the ball that performs this well, and then you have another side of the ball that's struggling so much, and then at the end of the day, they're both giving each other credit for making each other better. Like, this team could be going like this right now. They entirely could. Like, defense could be like, we're sick and tired of it. Like, please, like, can you help us out here? And instead, it's like, hey, we know you guys are hurt. We know you're struggling. Like, this is an all for one situation. Like, we got you. And instead of we got you, it's like, no, actually, can you turn the ball over? We want to go back out there again. We want to shut them down. But I just think, like, the way that this team is rallied around each other as a whole, and not, I mean, you really could be divided on two ends. It could be defense has been doing their thing, and offense, like, can you figure it out? And I think instead, to see them come together and really even credit each other still at this portion of the season is kind of been impressive, actually, to me.
Yeah, a couple of things you guys just said there. One, creating the package for James. Are we at all shocked that this coaching staff did that? Like, are we like sitting here thinking like, I'm really shocked that they did that. Like, this coaching staff,
maybe not this staff.
No,
this
not
staff.
this
Yeah.
This staff.
I think it's unusual first.
It's totally unusual in the grand
but
scheme
for this
of things.
staff,
But for this staff, you guys said that, and I'm like,
yeah, that makes sense.
It kind of does make sense.
Honestly, it's the same thing when they go out and recruit somebody I've never heard of. That's like, no, he's really fast. We like his frame.
And you know what? I think that's where it all started.
Yeah.
I think our expectation for the staff started with, who is this guy, and why do you think he's going to be good playing Division I football in a Power 5?
You got like Charles and Turner and Jalen Lloyd, and like none of these guys had big time offers, and they're just like, yeah, no, we like him.
And in year one, it's easy to say, like, you know what, I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna trust that that's the right move. And you know what, 3 years, 2 years, whatever down the road, if it's not the right move, we'll know it, and you guys will hear it. But that's the kind of the state of mind that everybody's in right now, from fans to media, just the college football world. It's like, okay, well, Nebraska has a winning record. They're 4-3. They're on pace to get somewhere where they haven't been in a long time. Maybe they actually do know more than people gave them credit for early on in the season. Because when you do go after guys with no stars, you're driving past a high school in Colorado, and you just happen to stop because some coach said, hey, you should look at this guy. He had no other offers anywhere else, and then he ends up with one to Nebraska at the end of that day. Like, that's just because the staff sees things that other people don't. So that's why I'm just not overly surprised when, things kind of evolve throughout the season. Like, when things just kind of hit us and we're just like, this staff will know what to do.
Well, it kind of goes back to that confidence thing, right? Because I think other coaching staffs do see those things, but they don't have the confidence.
Only Nebraska.
Yeah.
I don't think they have, a lot of staffs don't have the confidence to go out there and say, hey, I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll see a guy and they're like, oh, I kind of like him. And then they look him up and they're like, oh, he doesn't have any other offers. He doesn't have any stars. Nobody's talking about this guy. Like, they trust their eyes more than any coaching staff I've seen for a really long time, and I know Husker fans hate when I do this. It reminds me of when the Creighton staff would offer a guy like Kyrie Thomas that
I hate when you do
not a lot of guys saw coming out of high school,
Yeah.
or they offer a guy like Justin Patton before anybody cared about who Justin Patton was, because they trusted their eyes, they trusted their evaluations. Nebraska's coaching staff is so good at that, and they're so confident in their ability to develop that they're okay taking swings on a guy that other schools, I legitimately think they probably see the same things and just don't have the confidence in their own either development or in their own eyes to say, yeah, we're going to take this guy.
I just don't think you can like undervalue what a like full belief from a coaching staff in an individual player does for a team and a player in general. Like every single kid is the star at their high school if they're going to go play college football at some point, right? Like you are the star. And then you get to college and it's like, and you see the kids that either quit, they don't love it anymore, they're not committed to it anymore. And it's because they're probably, if it's not self-inflicted and it's not, a lack of hard work and that kind of stuff, they're not getting the same belief that they've gotten basically, I would say, for probably
Their
most
whole
of their
life.
career.
Yeah.
And you look at, and that's really hard because you go from being a star and you can be self-motivated and stuff like that. But if your coach is not willing to give you the same exact treatment as he's giving the next guy and you're working just as hard, that's really hard to go to practice every single day and know that I still have a fair shot. I'm going to make an impact on this team. When you look at the guy next to me, he's making more mistakes, but because maybe whatever relationship you guys have, I'm not going to get a shot. So I think for the guys that are on this team that have been there before this coaching staff, I said this, I think a few weeks ago on the radio show, like the relationship that Coach Rhule and Luke Reimer has is like fascinating to me because Luke Reimer has always been a name that this fan base has appreciated. He's always put in good work for this team. But this year he's become the voice, Coach Rhule says. He's become the reason Coach Rhule originally fell in love with this place, as he said. He's like, you don't understand what he's done for me to get to know what this place is like and enjoy coaching here. Like the player, like Tommy Hill, he was like, it just took Coach Cooper to be like, hey, you're good, but do you know how good you can be? I'm gonna put some belief in you and you show me, and I got you. And I think for a coaching staff to do that, play from what it sounds like, I could be completely wrong, right? But from what it looks like, and the guys that are stepping up that have been on this roster before, and then have a little bit of belief, and someone's like, we think you're good. We don't think you're a waste of space, and we don't think you're a waste of a scholarship. You're be impactful. And I think that belief goes a long way to see the guys that were just stepping on the field a few times to being the dudes on this team. That's not oh, we found this random talent. It was already there. It just had to kind of be ignited again.
Do you guys remember Big Ten Media Days and the 3 players that went with Coach Rhule to Big Ten Media Days? It was Ethan Piper, it was Quentin Newsome, and it was Luke Reimer, right?
Yeah, and we were all like, okay.
Well, no, a lot of people were like, Luke Reimer, right? That was the one. Ethan Piper was understood.
Yes, for sure.
Quentin Newsome went last year, right?
Yes,
so it was just
but it was no quarterback.
No quarterback.
Well, Jeff Sims, I guess, was there for one of them. But it wasn't a running back. It wasn't whatever.
Was it Jeff? It was Jeff Sims and Piper. I'm sorry. Did I say Newsome?
Newsome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scratch that. We'll reverb. We're going back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sims makes sense, right?
Sims makes sense. Piper makes sense. And then everyone was like Luke Reimer. And I remember watching Luke in spring practice. And I was watching him work with Dvorak, and he was just with his group of guys, right? MJ Sherman was there in that same pod. It wasn't all linebackers, but it was just Luke Reimer and Dvorak were side by side. Luke would run a play, run a drill. It would be 120%. That's how he would move. And then he would sprint back in line and he would talk to somebody. Talk about a rep, talk about something different. It was with
so much
freshman, Maverick Noonan was with that group. He would talk to Maverick Noonan. Then he would do his rep again, 130%. Right? So not only is he working by example, leading by example in that moment of saying hey, no matter what, if this is practice, if this is a game, we are going full speed. We're running through this brick wall. But he's also coming back around and he's teaching. And that's what embodies a leader. And that's what Coach Rhule really, I think, took a liking to early on, because then Dvorak would lean on Reimer to get information across to certain players. And I was just kind of watching this beautiful carousel, just go in this one little pod. And then I'd go over to Evan Cooper's drill and he's just screaming away, yelling at people. But I love Evan Cooper.
Different communication styles.
Different communication style.
No, but Coop's great.
But that also goes back to what you were saying about Luke Reimer and Rhule's affinity for him.
Well, and it's you saw a very similar thing. We talked about this a little bit earlier with Ethan Piper, another guy that was at Media Days, right? Okay, this guy's out injured for the season. He's already talking about, okay, this is going to be really good for Justin
Yeah,
Evans Jenkins,
yeah.
and this is long term. This is going to be better for his development. And I think maybe we didn't appreciate how close Justin Evans Jenkins was to getting on the field
Yeah.
anyway. There were talk about how I think there was legitimate questions in camp if he was going to beat out Ben Scott for that center spot. I mean, they really, really liked him. And obviously they didn't want to get him onto the field this way. But the fact that he's now in a position to play, I have the least amount of concerns for him out of anybody that's filling in right now, because Prohaska, I just don't know what he looks like now, like in terms of his health, his mental state, his like just his size. Like he's so big now.
Yeah.
He was not, I mean, he's grown another 2 inches since coming in. And even since playing his freshman year, where you're just like, I don't know if this guy can move the way he needs to. You've got Henry Lutovsky, who's been in the program for a couple years, but hasn't made a ton of noise. Out of those three guys, Justin Evans Jenkins is the guy I have the least amount of questions about. And he's the guy we've seen the least of, right? I mean, he's been on the field the least. He's a true freshman. You just look at that guy and you go, yeah, no, I feel okay about that.
I'm good.
And like you said, he goes from guard to center, and we're just like, yeah, no, this is fine.
Yeah.
Like, how many times do you see a backup center in there and you've got snap issues, you've got exchange issues, you've got all sorts of issues because of how important the center is there. And he just
see it all the time.
Not only does he go from, okay, I'm all of a sudden playing guard, and then he's like, oh, no, now I'm going to play maybe the most critical position on the offensive line with probably hardly any reps going into that week.
You know what kind of doesn't surprise me, however, though, is Coach Rhule told us after, I think, the first or second practice of fall camp, he said the speed and the talent on which we have on this freshman group is kind of ridiculous. He's like, the speed is what stands out. He goes, I've told them the only difference that gets you on the field. He's like, we're going to play our older guys. He's like, they want this. And he's like, they're going to lead us. Our freshmen will help us get there. He's like, the only difference why freshmen get on the field or why they don't is if how much they study film. If they put the phone down, if they stay here longer and they study film and they know the playbook, you will get on the field. So I'm not surprised that if he can go for multiple positions, that's one, it's telling me that he's proved to the coaching staff, I've watched film, I know what I'm doing. And that's probably why he's on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good stuff there. Coming up, we're going to lighten things up a little bit, start playing a little game here with Avery. It's our Wednesday game. Guess who?
Giving away some UNO hockey tickets.
Yeah, so call in 888-638-4876 if you want to win UNO hockey tickets right here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back.